How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. What the fuck is going on in the universe for January 6th through January 13th of 2020? Wow, I can't believe we're actually doing this horoscope. I don't even know how. Well, the first thing I want to say is I'm sick, so I might not be as excited as usual. I have a really sore throat, so I'm going to be very calm, which is a little bit weird for me during this video, but to pull up the highlights, just to kind of get started, we don't have a lot of time in this because there's a lot going on, but everything's kind of happening this week, guys. I mean, we should all be aware of what's kind of going down. The highlights, we have Mercury conjoining the Sun, we have the Lunar Eclipse in Cancer, we have Uranus stationing direct, we have Mercury conjoining Saturn Pluto, we have Saturn and Pluto conjoining, we have the Sun conjoining Saturn Pluto, and we have Venus moving into Pisces. Like, there's so much that is going on this week, but this is kind of that week that really cements everything in. This is kind of that week where we can, I don't want to say start anew, but it's going to feel like more of a new year after this. Like, there's going to be new vision, new goals, a new perspective, and I almost shot this video last week, and I'm kind of glad I didn't, just because of what's been going on in politics. And I don't want to bring this too much into politics right now because I don't think that's important for you and what you're doing every single day. But what I do think is important on the political level is, you know, astrologers, we've been all talking about this for quite some time. Like, this Saturn-Pluto conjunction was going to be big. Everyone's been talking about it for like years now. And as we look at the current state of affairs, we're going to be in a whole different world by the time we get into next week. And especially with what's going on last week, and I think, or with what happened last week, I feel like it's a really good analogy for what's kind of going on in our personal lives. Not like we're attacking someone else or anything like that, but the sense that there's great change on the way. There are bigger implications of the situation than we might think. This is a serious time. And so I just really wanted to bring up the fact that this is a serious time. These are serious, you know, transits, and take this time seriously. This isn't a time to be like, oh, you know, like my life sucks and I don't want to deal with anything. Like, this is a time to really go, what is important in my life? What is important to me? And what am I willing to do to fight for that, to protect that, to, preserve that? And I think that with this week being so intense, this isn't a time to really go like, oh, poor me, or life really sucks, but a time to go like, things can peace and beauty and all of the great things in life can easily get thrown away. But what are we going to do to protect that? What are we going to do to defend that? And I feel like this is a really this isn't just a powerful week in my opinion. This is a powerful week. And this is more of just this is not just, you know, we're opening into a new portal and we're going to new things. Like, this is a time to really take shit seriously. And so I just wanted to, I know we're kind of a few minutes in already, but I just wanted to preempt this video by saying that. But let's go ahead and jump into the horoscope. Let's get this show started. So luckily, nothing really happens until this weekend. This weekend is the big show, so we do at least go into the week starting a little bit easier. And on Monday, on January 6th, we're just going to be having the moon enter Gemini, not making too many transits. It will be making that opposition to Mars, so there is that sense of irritability. There is that sense of kind of getting frustrated with the answers and wondering where you're going to project your energy next. And I think on Monday is just a really good time to go over what exactly do you know, what are you thinking, and how does that go against what you're wanting to do? Like, Mars is in Sagittarius, it can be really easy to just want to go, but that moon in Gemini is kind of asking you like, hey, before you just go, let's kind of look at what we're getting into real quick. But as we get into Tuesday on the 7th, that's when we're going to be having that Sun sextile Neptune while it's in Capricorn. And like I said before, I'm pretty sure I said this last week, but that Neptune influence to all this, I think, is a little bit stronger than we might anticipate or that we might see at first. But you gotta remember, Neptune isn't making things clear. And when things aren't clear, like, nothing really makes sense. Things aren't easy to decipher. And as the Sun sextiles Neptune, there's this sense of, you know, uncertainty. There's this sense of, there's this illusion, not necessarily this illusion, but there's this mysticism around the area, around what we're doing. And I like to bring Neptune into this, not only in the sense that, like, yeah, things are gonna be blurry and confusing, but also, how can we see this in a more of a spiritual way? How can we see this as more of things don't have to just be, like, this isn't just cold, brutal reality. Like, we're also living in a time where things can happen to us, and it's kind of up to us to make that decision on how we see things in order to change things. So it's kind of like Neptune sextiling all of this Saturn, Pluto, and especially while it sextiles the sun. How are we going to see things through not only this realistic way to kind of take off the blur, to take off the illusion, but how can we also see things in a spiritual way? How can we really connect with ourselves during this time? And how can we connect ourselves in that spiritual way through that Capricorn lens of being structured, of being serious, of taking control and taking matters into your own hands? But then as we get into Wednesday on the 8th, this is when the ball kind of starts turning, and this is when things kind of get serious. So we will be having Jupiter actually conjoin the South Node exactly on Wednesday. And I've talked about this for like the past couple of videos, but I still want to emphasize on it because you have to remember that South Node isn't necessarily like bad. It's just not where we're going at the moment. And it's where do we need to really see, where do we need to let go of? Where do we need to change? Where do we need to stray away from? And while Jupiter's right here, Jupiter and Capricorn can have us, having structures and systems of the way that we believe things and how things operate and work. And sometimes that doesn't help us. Sometimes there needs to be change here. Sometimes there needs to be a new perspective put into play. And sometimes it's kind of like, you can have a business plan and theoretically it can work, but once you put it in practice, maybe that business plan doesn't work. And that's what Jupiter, Capricorn, and the South Node is changing your plans when you need to. You don't have to hold on to one thing and just kind of hope for the best with it. You can change as you go. And Jupiter conjoining the South Node is really going, hey, what beliefs do I need to change and how do I need to restructure that into a more progressive, more productive way? But also on Wednesday, we will be having Mercury sextile Neptune. Now, you have to remember, Mercury's combust right now. We don't know what Mercury's behind the sun. We don't know what's really going on with Mercury. We can't see, we can't talk, communication's kind of everywhere. And as Mercury sextiles Neptune, I want you guys to be a little bit careful about exactly what you're thinking, because as Mercury's combusting, that can make Mercury really ineffective in its job of communicating the right things and thinking the right things. And as it sextiles Neptune, there's going to be this, foggy illusion there, and there's going to be this confusion. So what I really think is important during this time is definitely taking a step back and looking at the facts, looking at what exactly is in front of you, not getting tied up into what ifs and, maybes, but what is in front of you and what can you address right here, right now, and not get lost into the potential of, all the different possibilities you can run into. And then as we get into Thursday on the 9th, this is when the moon is going to actually enter Cancer and make that conjunction to the North Node. And we start that lunar eclipse, which is going to end eclipse season for us. And we won't have another eclipse until about May. However, when the moon goes into Cancer, and I think this is a really important one, things are going to feel very serious. Like this Capricorn Cancer axis is kind of like, it's so, so much of our history is so much like embedded with Capricorn and Cancer, like axis of like government powers, restriction, limitation, focusing on like what are the necessities of things. And I put it in that frame because while there's all of this stuff going on in Capricorn and Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, Sun, Mercury, South Node, basically everything, there's a lot of seriousness attached to it. But inside that seriousness, it comes back down to what is of necessity. And that's the really important thing about Capricorn is they are putting necessity first. And that moon going into Cancer is that time for us to reflect on what is of necessity, what is of importance, what do we need, where do we need to protect, where do we need to nurture, those very Cancer moon words. But I feel like it can be a little bit confusing where you're like, this is a lunar eclipse in Cancer, but all of this Capricorn stuff, it's like, well, which way do I go? And it's like, if you want to be serious about what you're trying to establish with this Capricorn stuff, you need to be serious about what is of necessity to you. What do you need? And this isn't just a time, these are eclipses. This isn't just a fucking full moon. This is like, hey, life is asking you to look at what do you need and what needs to be protected, what needs to be taken care of, and using that initiative and that need to really fuel the fire for all of this Capricorn stuff. But that's just on Thursday, and that's just going to be the moon going into Cancer, conjoining the North Node, and there's going to be this overwhelming urge to understand what we need and to protect ourselves and to express our feelings, and that's going to be a really important thing to do during this week because it can be so easy to be so serious, but this is a very important week to express yourself, to feel what you're feeling, and say it out into the world, get it out there. You can't just keep everything bottled in. And as we go into Thursday, this is what's going to be kind of ramping things up, because then as we get into the next few days is when it's all going to come out. So then we get into Friday on January 10th. So first thing that happens, technically, I think, is the Mercury Cazimi, and then it's the lunar eclipse in Cancer. But this is going to be pretty wild because usually when Mercury goes Cazimi, it's like the answers are clear, we're understanding things, like things are like communication, ideas, thoughts. They're specific, they're clear, they have like a starting point. And while Mercury will go combust again after it goes Cazimi, this is that moment of clarity. This is that idea being sparked. But at the same time, we have this lunar eclipse going on, which is usually a full moon, but it gets eclipsed by the Earth. And so what I really think is interesting about eclipses is like there's where there should be light, there isn't. And I don't think that this is a time to necessarily go, oh yeah, the full moon in Cancer, this is when everything's going to make sense. It's an eclipse. Eclipses are kind of hard to predict in the sense that I forgot who said this on Twitter, and I gotta remember who said it. Someone said on Twitter, it's like you don't do things in life during eclipses. Like life happens to you during eclipses, and that's like such a great way to put it. And this isn't necessarily a time to go like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. This is more of like, this is how I'm going to handle myself in these situations. You can't always control what happens to you in life, but you can control how it affects you and what you do about it. And I think that's the most important thing about this eclipse is going, okay, I can't control what happens to me, but this is a full moon in Cancer. This is an eclipse. Like I need to do what is of necessity. I need to protect myself. I need to nurture myself, and I need to focus on these ideas. And so as Mercury goes Cazimi and things and ideas and all of these things start becoming clear and very serious and very like all of the especially I feel like this weekend is really when you're going to start seeing the things kind of pop up in politics. Like everything's going to kind of pop up. But once Mercury goes Cazimi and conjoins the sun, there's this level of clarity that makes sense on what needs to be done, what plans need to be implemented, that Capricorn stuff, along with that moon in Cancer, kind of preparing yourself for whatever it is that you're going to go through and going, I can't control what the outside world, all I can do is control what I do. And the first thing that I need to do is nurture myself, protect myself, what is of necessity to me, and where do I need to defend that. Then as we go into Saturday and we go into this weekend on the 11th, that's when we're going to be having the moon go into Leo and make that trine to Mars. And this is now after the eclipse. We're now done with the eclipses. I think this is going to be kind of exciting a little bit more than maybe people might expect, because as the moon's in Leo, we're feeling a little bit more proud. We're feeling a little bit more excited. It's trining Mars. We're feeling like, hey, I could definitely put my emotions to action right now and make things happen. But also on Saturday, we do have Uranus stationing direct. So expect the unexpected. Like it's not just like I said, this whole weekend's pretty crazy. So as we do go into Saturday and Uranus stations direct, things might change course. Things might kind of come up out of nowhere. But this moon in Leo, I do think is going to kind of give you that excitement and that pride to kind of go about it easily and kind of have that confidence to go about it, rather than that moon in Cancer of like, oh, I'm super sensitive right now. But the other thing that happens on Saturday is Mercury conjoins Saturn and Pluto. And what I think is interesting about this is the fact that Mercury's still combust at this point. So it's still kind of being burnt up by the sun. But as it conjoins Saturn and Pluto, there's this tonality of seriousness being projected. Like, a good way to put it is like, imagine you're in your house and you hear like I don't want to say like a tornado alarm, but like you hear like a roar and you don't see where it's coming from, but you hear it. That's kind of like Mercury conjoining Saturn and Pluto. Like you hear something being stirred up, but you're not really able to pinpoint the source of it. And so I think as Mercury conjoins Saturn and Pluto, on more of a natal perspective, on more of a personal perspective, it's going to be more of like, Mercury's just projecting Saturn and Pluto, and that's, hey, it's time to get serious. It's time to like level out, certain power structures. It's time to clear the area. Things are coming down. Things are being built up. And as Mercury conjoins that, that's going to speak that message out, but it's not going to be super visible. It's not going to be super tangible. But like I said, it's going to be like a roaring in the background. But that's when we get into Sunday. And that's when the sun conjoins Saturn and Pluto, and Saturn and Pluto conjoin each other. And I think this is really interesting because the sun's conjoining. And so technically we're going to be having Saturn and Pluto in the heart of the sun. So things are very put on the surface. Like things are like Cazimi, I forgot, I think it was Ibn Ezra said that like when a planet goes Cazimi, it's like being put on the like sitting on the lap of the king on his throne. And so it's kind of like being put into the light. It's kind of like, you know, being acknowledged in some way. And as that conjunction happens exactly when the sun conjoins Saturn and Pluto, I think Sunday's really gonna, I don't want to say, I will say rock our worlds both in a good and bad way, but I think that's gonna, Sunday next week is when we go, all right, like it's fucking game time, shit's serious now, what's gonna happen next? But I also think that this is a really powerful time to go, like, I feel like Sunday is going to be like the new year. Like this is where we can start anew again. Because Saturn's not going to come back and conjoin Pluto. This is the one and only time. And from this point on, we're basically only looking forward to the Mars retrograde with this narrative and the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction next year, at the end of this year. So this is kind of it for the year. This is kind of like the beginning of this. We're going to be working on this for the next year, basically, as Saturn goes back into Capricorn and Jupiter's there. We're not done with all of this yet, but this is definitely where it begins. And so I do think on Sunday, this is going to be a time to go, hey, again, where do I need to get serious about this and set a new foundation, begin anew. So rock bottom is a great place to start, is the best way to look at it. But then we go into Monday, and that's when we have Venus going to Pisces, and it's like, cool, at least we can enjoy Venus and Pisces things, where I feel like I've been a little bit more negative on this, even though I haven't, but Venus being so lovey-dovey, and in Pisces where things can be a little bit more open, I think this is going to bring a lot of alleviation towards the seriousness of Saturn and Pluto and kind of help us open up in a different perspective and give us just give us something that's enjoyable. So that's something to look forward to. And also on Monday, the moon goes into Virgo, but whatever. And next week, who gives a fuck what happens next week? Honestly, this week's enough. But the things that happen next week, we're going to rest. We're going to relax next week. That's for sure. I'm going to force you to rest and relax. The sun goes into Aquarius. Mercury goes into Aquarius. Cool, whatever. But my biggest suggestion is use this week and then maybe chill out next week. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here. I wish you all the best this week. You know, it can be, I feel like a lot of people are really scared about this. And in the times that we're in, you definitely have a rightful reason to be scared. There's a lot of uncertainty that's going to happen. But there's no reason to hold fear over things that you can't control. Because you're going to have fear whether you're going, like if you want to do something but you're too scared, you're going to have fear whether you do it or not. You're going to be scared of it. But you might as well accept that fear and face it, because 90% of the time the fears that you have are alleviated once you face them. And my biggest suggestion is face your fears this week. Just do something different this week. Be serious about it, because this is the time to do it. I don't want you guys to miss this opportunity. But again, with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here. I love you guys so much, and I'll be seeing you next week.